He thought the town forgot him until he opened the door that morning. Matt hadn't been back to his hometown in nearly 20 years, and he wasn't sure what he was expecting when he finally made the decision to return. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe if you love meaningful stories, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I really enjoy seeing where these stories travel. The drive back felt longer than it actually was, the roads as familiar as they were foreign. He'd left at 18 with big dreams and a suitcase full of ambition. But now, with every mile he drove, memories of the town crept back into his mind. Some of them he had pushed away long ago: his father's funeral, his best friend's betrayal, his mother's quiet disappointment when he left. He had never really looked back, not once, and certainly never expected to return. But here he was, on the outskirts of town, uncertain of what to do with the years that had passed. The town was smaller than he remembered. The once bustling downtown now looked more like a ghost town, with a few empty storefronts and faded signs. The old diner, where he and his friends used to hang out, still stood at the corner of Main and First, though it seemed quieter now. He passed by it without a second thought. It wasn't that he didn't want to see it again, but something about it felt like it had been frozen in time. He couldn't help but wonder if the people who had known him here still remembered the person he had been, or if they'd forgotten all about him. He pulled into the parking lot of the local gas station, the same place he'd worked as a teenager to save up for his first car. The man behind the counter, an older version of the guy who used to hang out with Matt during breaks, looked up when he walked in. The man's eyes narrowed, studying him for a moment. "Matt Davis?" the man asked, his voice cautious, like he wasn't sure. Matt nodded, surprised by how little had changed. "Yeah, it's me. I'm back." The man leaned forward, studying him for a moment longer before offering a faint smile. "Well, I'll be. Haven't seen you around in a long time." "Yeah, it's been a while," Matt said, his voice more uncertain than he expected. The conversation moved slowly after that, the man telling Matt about the changes in town, how some families had moved away, how the local school had been shut down, how the town had slowly begun to fade. The longer Matt listened, the more the weight of time seemed to settle on him. He'd thought that by leaving, he'd left it all behind. But now, standing here, it felt as if the past had never really gone anywhere. It was still here, hanging in the air, waiting to be acknowledged. As Matt stepped outside, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something he wasn't prepared for. He thought he'd come back for closure, for some kind of resolution, but the truth was, he wasn't sure what he was hoping for anymore. His childhood home was long gone, sold to a family he didn't recognize. The friends he once had moved on, just as he had. The memories he had left behind were starting to feel distant, like old photographs that had started to fade. Matt turned back toward the diner, unsure if he wanted to walk through its doors or keep walking past it. But something inside him pushed him forward. Maybe it was the hope that, despite everything, the place would still feel familiar. Maybe it was the fear that if he didn't step inside now, he would regret it forever. The small-town diner hadn't changed much, though it seemed quieter than he remembered. He could hear the hum of conversation, the clink of silverware, but none of the familiar faces were there. The waitress behind the counter looked up at him with a mixture of recognition and uncertainty. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I used to come here a lot," Matt said. "I used to live here, actually." She raised an eyebrow, her eyes studying him. "A lot of people used to come here." "Yeah," Matt said softly. "I guess they don't anymore." The words hung in the air for a moment, but before she could respond, another voice called out from the back. "Matt Davis?" Matt turned and saw an older man walking toward him. It was the owner of the diner, Mr. Thompson, who had always been there when Matt and his friends came in after school. "Well, I'll be damned," Mr. Thompson said, a smile spreading across his face. "It's been a long time, son." "I didn't think anyone would remember me," Matt said, a strange feeling tugging at his chest. Mr. Thompson clapped him on the back, and for a moment, Matt felt welcome. "Of course, we remember you. You were a regular here. You didn't think the town would forget you, did you?" Matt smiled, the weight of his past feeling a little lighter. He hadn't been forgotten after all. Matt sat at the counter. Mr. Thompson had stepped away to help another customer, leaving Matt alone in the quiet diner. The familiar smells of fried food and fresh coffee filled the air, but it didn't quite feel the same. He looked around, feeling a strange tug of nostalgia. This place had once been the center of his world, and now it felt so distant from the life he had built in the city. He hadn't expected to feel like this. When he left, it was with the belief that the town wouldn't miss him, that he wouldn't miss it. But as he sat there, he realized just how much it had shaped him, and how much he had tried to run away from it. The door opened, and he saw a woman with a little girl. He didn't recognize them, but they reminded him of his own mother. For a moment, Matt thought about his parents. They hadn't lived to see him become the man he was now. He thought about the sacrifices they'd made for him, the way his father had worked tirelessly at the factory, hoping for something better for Matt. But Matt had always felt like the town wasn't enough. He had wanted more than what the small town could give him. So, he left, without a second thought, eager to prove he was bigger than this place. But now, he realized how much he had taken for granted. The door opened again, and Matt recognized the man who walked in. It was Tom, his old best friend, the one he hadn't seen since the day he left town. Tom had always been the one to keep the jokes going, the one who didn't mind teasing Matt about his ambitions. They'd been close, back in the day, and Matt had never fully understood why they lost touch when he left. Tom had stayed in town, gotten married, had a family. Matt had thought that life here had been too small for him, too simple. But now, seeing Tom walk in, he realized how wrong he had been to think that. Tom saw him almost immediately. He paused in the doorway for a moment, his eyes widening with surprise, before he made his way over to Matt. "Well, if it isn't the big city guy," Tom said, his voice light and teasing, just like old times. "You finally come back to see what you left behind?" Matt stood up. "I didn't think anyone would remember me," he said, a half smile playing on his lips. Tom's smile softened, and he pulled Matt into a hug. "Of course, we remember you," he said, his voice quieter now. "You were part of this place. You always will be." Matt didn't know what to say. Tom pulled away, giving him a look that said more than words ever could. "You ever think about coming back?" Tom asked, settling into the seat next to him. Matt hesitated. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I guess I never thought I'd be back here." Tom nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "It's different now," he said, looking out the window. "The town's not what it used to be, but I think that's the way it's supposed to be." Matt nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I'm just realizing that now." Tom smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "I'm glad you came back, Matt, even if it's just for a little while." As the conversation drifted, Matt realized something. This town, the people here, they hadn't forgotten him. He had been the one to walk away, to shut it all out. But now, as he sat here, talking to Tom, he felt like he was finally coming home. After his conversation with Tom, Matt felt a strange mixture of emotions. He had spent so many years trying to outrun this place, yet here he was, feeling more at home than he had in a long time. Matt walked through the streets, his hands in his pockets, the air cool against his skin. The town had changed in subtle ways. It wasn't the bustling town he remembered, but it still had its charm. He couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the people he had left behind. So much time had passed, and he hadn't kept in touch with anyone. Matt found himself at the old high school, Lincoln High School. It hadn't changed much, except for the added security cameras and the new paint. The memories of his time there flooded back. He had always thought he needed to leave, to escape, but now, standing here, it felt like he had never really left. He stood there for a moment longer, then turned to leave, but a voice called out from behind him. "Matt? Matt Davis, is that you?" He turned, surprised to hear someone call his name. It was a woman, about his age, with short brown hair and a warm smile. She was standing near the entrance to the school, her arms crossed over her chest, looking at him curiously. "Sarah?" Matt asked, squinting slightly as he recognized her. "Sarah Thompson?" She laughed, nodding. "I can't believe it's you. I was wondering when you'd show up." Matt walked toward her, unsure of what to say. Sarah had been his neighbor growing up, and they had spent a lot of time together when they were younger. But after he left for college, they lost touch. He hadn't expected her to be here, still living in the town. "It's been a long time," Matt said, his voice quiet. "I didn't think anyone would still be here." "Oh, I'm still here," Sarah said, her tone light, but there was something deeper in her eyes, something that told Matt she wasn't just talking about the town. "You know, some of us never really leave. We just stay." Matt felt a twinge of guilt. He had spent so much time trying to escape, but now, looking at Sarah, he realized how much he had missed by running. "You never left," Matt said, his voice soft. "I don't know if I ever really understood why you stayed." Sarah shrugged, a faint smile on her lips. "Maybe because I never needed to leave. I didn't think the world was as big as everyone made it out to be. Sometimes it's just about finding your place, right here." She motioned around them, indicating the town, the school, the life that had continued without him. For so long, he had thought that his escape was the answer to everything. But now, standing there with Sarah, he wasn't so sure. He had left because he thought he needed more. But maybe the truth was, he had been searching for something that was right here all along. "It's good to see you, Sarah," Matt said, his voice breaking through the silence that had settled between them. Sarah smiled, a little wistful. "It's good to see you too, Matt. I never thought you'd come back." "Me neither," Matt admitted. "But I guess I never really left. Not really." They stood there for a moment. Matt realized that he had come back to the town to understand the things he had taken for granted. And for the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider. "You should come by the diner tomorrow," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "Everyone's been asking about you. It'll be like old times." Matt smiled, feeling a sense of warmth spread through him. "I'd like that," he said. "I think I'd like that a lot." And for the first time, he wasn't so sure he needed to keep running. The next morning, Matt found himself walking down Main Street toward the diner. The door jingled as he stepped inside. The diner hadn't changed much. There were the same mismatched chairs, the same chipped counter, the same worn-out booths. But something was different this time. It felt welcoming, like a place he could return to. Sarah was already sitting at the counter talking to Linda, the waitress who had been there for as long as Matt could remember. When Sarah saw him walk in, she waved, her face lighting up with a smile. "Matt," she called. I'm glad you made it. Matt smiled back, feeling a little awkward as he walked toward them. Yeah, I figured I should stop by. Good to see you, man, Linda said as she placed a cup of coffee in front of Matt. It's been a long time. Yeah, Matt said, taking the seat next to Sarah. Too long, I guess. The three of them sat in a comfortable silence for a moment. So, Sarah said after a while, her tone lighter, how's life been treating you since you left? It's been good. Busy. A lot of work. You know, the usual stuff. I guess I've just been chasing things. Chasing opportunities, success. But, I don't know. Coming back here, seeing how things have changed, it feels different now. I don't know how to explain it, Matt answered. Linda smiled knowingly. You never really leave, do you? She said, wiping the counter with a rag. Not completely. Not if you've been a part of this place. Matt looked at her, feeling a weight in her words that he hadn't expected. I guess I always thought there was something bigger out there, Matt said slowly. Something more than what this town could give me. I wanted to prove that I could make it on my own, you know? Sarah nodded, her expression understanding. I get it. We all want something more, something bigger. But sometimes you don't realize what you have until it's gone. Matt glanced around the diner. The small town life, the familiarity, the people who had known him before he became someone else. They hadn't forgotten him. Not really. And maybe, he realized, he hadn't forgotten them either. Do you think it's too late to come back? Matt asked. He hadn't expected to feel this way. Hadn't expected to find himself wondering if he could fit back into a life he thought he had outgrown. Sarah looked at him for a moment, then smiled. I don't think it's ever too late to come back, she said. The town's still here, waiting, and so are the people who care. Matt's chest tightened slightly as he let her words sink in. Maybe it wasn't too late after all. Maybe he hadn't missed his chance. I guess I'll have to stick around a little longer to find out, Matt said with a small smile. Linda laughed, refilling his coffee cup. Well, you've got time. We'll be here, just like we always are. Matt felt something inside him settle, a kind of peace he hadn't realized he was searching for. Maybe he didn't need to chase success anymore. Maybe the things he had been running from weren't so bad after all. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The morning after his visit to the diner, Matt felt like he had taken the first real step towards something he hadn't even known he was searching for. The town hadn't forgotten him. He had expected more resistance, more confusion, but instead, the people he had known seemed to greet him with open arms, like no time had passed at all. As the day unfolded, Matt found himself walking through the streets again. He was taking his time, allowing himself to soak in the small changes and the things that remained the same. He passed by the old church where he had spent so many Sundays, sitting beside his mother. His phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a text from Sarah, asking if he was still around and if he wanted to meet up later in the afternoon. He smiled at the message, feeling a sense of warmth spread through him. It had been so long since he had seen her, but it felt like nothing had changed. The town hadn't changed, and neither had the people who had been there when he needed them. He walked out of the church, his mind clearer than it had been in days. He still wasn't sure what he was going to do next, whether he would stay for good or head back to the city, but at least now, he felt like he could breathe. The weight of the past didn't feel as heavy, and the future didn't seem so uncertain. The answers weren't as important as he had thought. Maybe it wasn't about finding the right answers. Maybe it was about accepting the life he had left behind, the life that had always been a part of him. As he met Sarah at the diner later that afternoon, He felt a sense of calm he hadn't known in years. She was sitting at the counter, a coffee cup in front of her, looking just as she had all those years ago. She smiled when she saw him walk in, her eyes lighting up in recognition. "Hey, you made it," she said, her voice warm and easy. "Yeah," Matt said, taking a seat beside her. "I did. I guess I needed a little more time to figure things out." Sarah raised an eyebrow, her smile softening. "And?" Matt leaned back in his seat, his gaze drifting to the window where the afternoon light was just beginning to fade. "And I think I'm starting to understand that maybe I don't need to figure it all out. Maybe it's just enough to be here, to see what's changed and what hasn't." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people. Realizing that it's okay not to have it all figured out, that the answers come when they're ready." Matt smiled, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease. It wasn't just the town that had waited for him to return. It was the people, the memories, the life he had left behind. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't need to run from it anymore. "I think you're right," he said, meeting her gaze. "Maybe I don't need to keep running." Sarah smiled back, a quiet understanding passing between them. The past wasn't something to fix or escape from. It was something to accept, something to appreciate for what it had been. And maybe, just maybe, that was all he needed to move forward. As the sun set over the town, casting a warm glow across the streets, Matt felt a new sense of clarity. He didn't have all the answers, but he didn't need them. He was home. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. The next few days passed in a blur of familiar faces, places, and conversations. Matt spent his mornings walking through the town, rediscovering the things he had once taken for granted. The corner store, the park bench by the river, the old tree in the backyard of his childhood home. Each step was like unlocking a door to a memory, a time when life felt simpler, when he hadn't yet made the choices that would take him away. But as much as he tried to soak in every moment, something kept tugging at him, something he couldn't quite place. It was the feeling that he didn't belong here anymore. At the diner, Sarah was still a constant presence, her easy smile and comforting laughter grounding him as he adjusted to the life he had left behind. She was always happy to chat, catching him up on old news, asking about his life in the city. But there were times when Matt caught her watching him with an expression that was harder to read, an expression that seemed to say there was more she wanted to ask, more she wanted him to share. But Matt wasn't ready to share everything. Not yet. One afternoon, after lunch, Sarah asked if he wanted to take a walk through the park. It was a warm day, and the park was peaceful, with only a few people scattered around, enjoying the sunshine. As they walked, the conversation moved from one topic to another, lighthearted at first, until Sarah grew quiet. She looked at Matt, as if weighing something in her mind. "So, Matt," she began, her voice soft, "have you figured it out yet? What you're going to do?" Matt glanced at her, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" "You know," Sarah said, her voice a little hesitant, "about staying, about coming back here, about what it all means for you." Matt stopped walking and turned to face her. What was he really looking for? "I don't know," Matt admitted. "I think I came back thinking it would all just make sense when I stepped foot here again. But it hasn't. It's not the same town I left, and I'm not the same person who left it. It's like there's a piece of the puzzle missing, and I can't figure out where it fits." Sarah nodded slowly, her expression softening with understanding. "It's not easy, you know. Coming back. Trying to figure out where you fit in a place that doesn't stay the same." Matt sighed, running a hand through his hair. I guess I thought coming back would give me some kind of closure. But instead, it just feels like I'm stuck between two lives. The one I had here, and the one I built in the city. I don't know how to reconcile the two. Sarah studied him for a moment. Maybe you don't have to reconcile them. Maybe it's not about choosing one or the other. Maybe it's about accepting both. The town, your past, it's a part of who you are, whether you want it to be or not. But the city, your life now, that's a part of who you are too. Matt felt a shift inside him, like something he had been holding on to for years had finally started to loosen. I don't know if I can do that, he said quietly. It feels like I've left so much behind, so much I can't go back to. I think, Sarah said, her voice gentle, sometimes we think we're leaving things behind, but in reality, we're just changing. We're carrying those things with us, even if we don't realize it. The key is learning to move forward with those pieces of yourself, not run from them. Her words hung in the air, and for the first time since he'd returned, Matt felt something shift within him. He didn't have to choose between the life he had built and the life he had left behind. He could carry them both. They were parts of him, after all. They continued their walk in silence, the conversation drifting away as Matt let the quiet settle over him. For the first time in days, he felt lighter. The weight of the past, the uncertainty of his future, didn't feel so heavy. It was all part of him, and maybe that was enough. Maybe he didn't need to figure everything out just yet. Maybe it was enough to just be here, to live in the present, and let the answers come when they were ready. As they reached the park bench where they had sat so many years ago, Matt took a deep breath. He didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, he felt okay with that. He wasn't running anymore. He was finally allowing himself to just be. The next day, Matt found himself back at the diner. He wasn't sure if it was the peace that had settled within him after his conversation with Sarah, or if he was just starting to get used to the slower rhythm of life here. It had been years since he'd allowed himself to slow down, to really breathe. And now, it seemed like he could finally hear the world around him again. The door to the diner jingled, and Matt looked up. It was Linda, the waitress, walking toward him with a warm smile. She placed a plate of pancakes in front of him without a word. He hadn't ordered them, but it didn't matter. The town had a way of doing things like that. It wasn't about what you asked for. It was about what they thought you needed. Thanks, Matt said, smiling at her. You're welcome, hun, Linda replied, her voice soft but full of familiarity. You're starting to look like you belong here again. Matt chuckled, though there was a tinge of sadness in his smile. I don't know about that. I've still got a lot to figure out. Linda leaned against the counter, her eyes watching him carefully. You've been running for a long time, Matt. It's hard to come back and face everything, I know. But sometimes, the place you think you're running from is the place that's been waiting for you all along. Matt's heart clenched at her words. He hadn't expected her to say that, but it felt true. He had left because he thought there was something more out there, something bigger and better. But now, standing here, eating pancakes in the same old diner, he wasn't so sure anymore. Maybe what he was looking for had always been here, quietly waiting for him to notice it. You know, Matt said, picking up his fork and taking a bite of the pancakes, I never really realized how much I took this town for granted. I left thinking I could just move on and leave it all behind, but it doesn't work that way, does it? Linda smiled knowingly. No, it doesn't. But you're here now, and that's what matters. Matt nodded, looking down at his plate. The truth was, he had spent so many years running from everything that had shaped him. He had left because he thought he had outgrown it all. But now, after coming back, he realized that the pieces of his past, his family, the people in this town, the memories, had shaped who he was. And maybe he didn't have to run from them anymore. The door opened again, and Matt's eyes were drawn to the figure walking through. It was Tom, his old best friend, looking just as he had when Matt left, slightly older, but the same easy smile and relaxed demeanor. Tom spotted him immediately and made his way over to the counter. "Well, if it isn't Matt Davis, back from the dead," Tom said, his voice loud and jovial, just like old times. Matt stood up and embraced him. "It's been a long time, man," he said, his voice a little hoarse with emotion. "I didn't think I'd ever be back." Tom laughed, clapping him on the back. "I didn't think you'd be back either. But hey, you're here now. That's what matters." They both sat down at the counter, and Tom ordered a cup of coffee. The conversation flowed easily at first. Stories about life since Matt left, how the town had changed, how they had both grown up in their own ways. But soon, the tone shifted. "So, what's the plan, man?" Tom asked, taking a sip of his coffee. "You're here now. What are you going to do with it?" Matt thought for a moment, his hands wrapping around his coffee cup. The question seemed simple enough, but it wasn't. He had spent so much time thinking about the future, about what was next, that he hadn't really considered what was in front of him. The truth was, he didn't have a clear plan. He didn't need one. "I'm not sure," Matt said honestly, "but I think I'm going to stay for a while. See what happens." Tom nodded, his expression serious now. "You know, you've got a lot of people here who care about you. You don't have to figure it all out alone." Matt smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was carrying everything by himself. The town, the people, his past. It wasn't something he had to run from anymore. It was a part of him, and maybe that was enough. Maybe he didn't need all the answers right away. "Thanks, Tom," Matt said softly. "I think I'm finally starting to understand that." As they sat there, the sun setting outside, Matt felt a quiet peace settle over him. Maybe he didn't know what the future held. Maybe he hadn't figured it all out yet. But for the first time, that didn't seem like such a bad thing. Maybe for once, it was enough to just be here. The following morning, Matt woke up to a clear blue sky and the faint sound of birds chirping outside his window. For the first time since he'd returned, he didn't feel a heavy weight on his chest. The uncertainty that had been gnawing at him for days, weeks even, had begun to fade into something softer, something more manageable. Maybe it was the conversations he'd had, the people he'd reconnected with, or maybe it was just time. But whatever it was, Matt was starting to feel like he could finally breathe. He spent the morning in the quiet solitude of the house he'd rented just outside of town. He had unpacked most of his things the day before, but now it was time to get to work. The place was small, old even, but there was something comforting about it, about the way the rooms felt lived in, even when they weren't. It was a place that didn't require perfection. It was a place to come home to. After making breakfast, Matt decided to walk into town again. He hadn't made any firm plans, but he wanted to see the town with fresh eyes, to appreciate what was here now, instead of mourning what had been lost. As he walked, he noticed the little details that had once been easy to overlook: the bright flowers in the storefront windows, the soft hum of a lawnmower in the distance, the way the light filtered through the trees lining the streets. It felt like life was moving at a different pace here, slower and more deliberate, and for the first time, it didn't feel like something he needed to escape from. He stopped by the diner, hoping to catch up with Sarah. She was there, just like he had expected, sitting at the counter with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked up when she saw him, and that same warm smile spread across her face. "Morning," she said, her voice bright. "You're up early." Matt nodded, taking a seat next to her. "Yeah, just needed some time to think. I've been feeling better about things, you know?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Better?" "Yeah," Matt said, his voice quieter now. "I think I've finally stopped running from the past. It's like I was so focused on moving forward that I forgot where I came from. And coming back here, talking to people, seeing this place again, it's helped me understand that I don't have to leave all of this behind. I can be here, in the present, and still move forward." Sarah smiled, her eyes thoughtful. "I think you've always had a place here, Matt. It's just about finding your way back to it." Matt leaned back in his seat, taking in her words. They weren't groundbreaking, but they were true. He didn't need to abandon his past to build a future. Maybe that was the lesson he had been avoiding all this time. He had spent so much of his life thinking that he had to choose between one or the other, his past or his future. But the truth was, he didn't have to choose. They could coexist, and for the first time, that felt like enough. As they sat there, chatting casually about old friends, life, and the changes that had taken place over the years, Matt realized that he didn't need to figure it all out today. It wasn't about rushing toward some ideal future. It was about living in the moment, accepting the past, and letting the future unfold in its own time. After a while, Sarah stood up. "You're welcome to stay as long as you want," she said, her voice light. "But if you're planning to stick around, I have a feeling the town might want to see you more than just once in a while." Matt chuckled. "Yeah, I think I'll stick around for a bit." She smiled. "Good. It's about time you realize that home's not always something you have to leave to find." As Matt watched Sarah walk back toward the kitchen, he sat there for a moment, taking everything in. The town was still here. He was still here. And maybe, just maybe, that was all that mattered. For the first time in years, Matt felt like he had a future here, one that was built on the foundation of his past, not in spite of it. And maybe that was the beginning of something new, something he didn't have to run from anymore. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the town as Matt stood outside the diner, staring at the familiar storefront. He hadn't expected to feel so comfortable here so quickly. The days since his return had blurred together, each one filled with new faces, old memories, and conversations that stretched late into the night. But today, there was a clarity he hadn't expected. It wasn't about fitting everything into place perfectly. It was about being present, letting things unfold without the pressure to make it all make sense. As he walked toward the door, he saw Sarah sitting at the counter, her coffee cup in front of her, and for a moment she looked up and caught his gaze. She smiled, a small, knowing smile, as if she could sense exactly what was going on in his mind. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft but warm. Matt nodded, taking a seat next to her. "Yeah, actually, I think I've finally stopped trying to make this all fit into some grand plan. It's just enough to be here." Sarah studied him for a moment, as though she were weighing his words. "You know, it's okay not to have everything figured out. You don't need to keep looking for answers. Sometimes, you just have to live with the questions." Matt took a deep breath, his shoulders loosening with the simplicity of her statement. It was true. For years he'd been chasing something, always looking for the next big thing. He thought he needed answers, clarity, some grand purpose. But in the end, maybe the purpose was simply to stop running, to appreciate the here and now, and accept that the past was a part of him, not a weight to be carried around. "I think I've spent my whole life thinking I had to run from things," he said, his voice quiet, "that everything in the past had to stay there, behind me. But now, I realize that maybe the past is a part of who I am, and it's okay to be here. It's okay to be in this moment, just as I am." Sarah smiled again, a warmth in her eyes. "I'm glad you're here, Matt. I really am." Matt nodded, looking around the diner. It wasn't just the diner, though. It was everything. The town, the people, his memories. They had all shaped him in ways he hadn't realized. He wasn't the same person who left all those years ago. But maybe that was okay. Maybe who he was now was enough, and he didn't need to keep chasing a version of himself that didn't exist anymore. As the evening settled in, more people began to trickle into the diner. A group of old friends from high school waved at him from the booth, and Matt felt a warmth spread through him. He waved back, but instead of feeling like an outsider, like someone who didn't belong, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The waitress, Linda, came over to refill his coffee. "Looks like you're starting to settle in," she said with a smile. "It's good to see you here again. We've missed you." Matt smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle in his chest. "I've missed this place too," he said. "I didn't realize how much until I came back." Linda gave him a knowing look. "Sometimes you have to leave to understand what you had all along." It was a simple truth, but one that Matt hadn't fully grasped until now. The town, his past, the people who had always been here, they were all a part of him. And now that he was back, it didn't feel like he was trying to fit into a life that wasn't his anymore. It felt like he was finally making peace with the parts of himself he had left behind. As the night grew darker, the lights of the diner flickered softly, and Matt looked out the window at the quiet streets. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't worried about it. He had found something here that he had been missing for years, a sense of belonging, of acceptance, of home. And that was enough for now. More than enough. He smiled, taking another sip of his coffee as the sound of laughter and conversation filled the diner. This was where he was supposed to be, and for the first time, he felt like he was finally home. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy meaningful stories like this, we'd love to have you as a subscriber.